Hello everyone, Nathan Martinez here, and this is my podcast for my WP1 assignment. Now to get us started today, I want you guys to think for a moment. Have you ever struggled? It can be anything. Maybe it's family, friends, a pet, or an annoying person in your life. Well, I'm going to tell you about the time when I struggled. This time in particular I'm talking about is when I learned to code in high school. So, for those of you who don't know, I graduated from Oswego High School in the spring of 2024. My high school experience was nothing short of interesting. It was your average high school experience with all the usual heartbreak, stress, fun, but mostly it was me maturing and realizing what I wanted to do with my life. In my entire life, I've done many things. Some of these things are traveling, becoming an Eagle Scout, and exploring. Just taking life head on. But I never struggled with anything as much as I've struggled with learning how to code. In my sophomore year, against my judgment, I took Programming 1. On the first day of class, I met the bright and bubbly Mrs. Cook. Now I don't know if this was just dumb luck, but Mrs. Cook was one of the best teachers I've ever had. She was motivating and kind and genuinely seemed like she wanted to get to know her students. Mrs. Cook was an older teacher, so on the first day she tried to connect with us students by telling us how technology has evolved. As the class went on over the next few weeks, I learned the basics of learning Python. I learned things like print statements, input statements, etc. Now all was going well until we got to the halfway through the semester. I started to suffer from something called school burnout. What I mean by that is no matter how hard I tried, I just could not find the will to do my homework or stay awake in class and other things. It also doesn't help that in this part in my life I was dealing with problems in my friend group. In my friend group I am sort of the bridge, I guess. What I mean by bridge is I was the connection between my friend group and another friend group. And when both friend groups started to argue and fight, it kind of all got dumped on my shoulders, which caused me stress and just killed so much of my motivation. All the energy I had got put into trying to save my friend's group. Due to all this, when I got to any of my classes for the matter, I just had nothing left. And if you couldn't guess, I fell behind. In class, we were learning classes/subclasses which were called methods. Now methods have this thing called return statements, and before you use the method you must put your variables in it, and you must declare it. Since I was just a zombie when we were learning this, when it came to the task assignment, I just couldn't figure it out. Also, since I was extremely stubborn, I wasn't going to ask for help. So, I just sat there for a few days. Every day I just sat there, not only in programming but every other class as well. In every class I just sat there, thinking about life, pain, and the things I was going through. I was lost in a field with fog upon layers of fog. In that fog, there was a torch for only a few things. It was pain.my grievances and sadness. But mostly my loneliness. Throughout every class, for about a week and a half, I just sat there until eventually Mrs. Cook came over and asked me if I was all right. Of course, I said yeah when I wasn't. Right as she was leaving, she said with a smile, "Make sure you get your work done, you don't want to fall behind." Although that statement wasn't much, it was enough for me to lift my head and just look at the empty computer screen. The assignment was due in 2 days, and we had 2 weeks to work on it. I had nothing but a blank screen. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I sat there and stared at the blank screen. Until all of a sudden the fog seemed to start to lift. The torch became brighter and brighter until eventually it was just enough for me to sit up straight, crack my knuckles, and begin the assignment at Lazar speed. An assignment that was supposed to take about 2 weeks that I was procrastinating took me a little under 30 minutes. From that point on, whenever I got into class, I was hyper-focused. I never slacked off, always making sure I had the best work I could produce. I am very good at programming, so Mrs. Cook asked people if they were struggling to ask me for help. Throughout the rest of the year, I developed what Mrs. Cook called a programming mind. What a programming mind is where I can see a set of instructions and I would visibly see how to code it in my mind. It got to the point where I was even correcting Mrs. Cook when she made a mistake. Mrs. Cook was more than happy because I started Excel. I started to do and look better overall. At the end of the semester, I passed with an A+, but my programming career did not stop there. Eventually, I took Programming 2 junior year and both computer science classes senior year. In senior year, I had many more challenges when it came to programming. I was learning an entirely new language along with other coding techniques. Although it was rough, I had what I learned from Mrs. Cook and a programming one to guide me to the very end. Now for my future, I am applying for internships at a major gaming company in hopes of taking my skills and love for coding and video games to the real world. Conclusion. It wasn't always easy, and as I go forward in life, I still don't expect it to. But life will only ever go forward, so you should too. That's a quote by me, BTW. But that quote I live by 100%. In the world today, all go through different challenges, some for the better and some for the worse. If we as people didn't go through that, we would all be the same person. Remember, your challenges shape who you are as a person. Take your strengths and uniqueness and always walk forward in life. Brace every challenge head on and never forget who you are. Thank you for your time. Nathan out.